Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our information session for the new release of the Tactical Urbanism Guide. My name is Chris McIntosh. I'm an urban planner and designer with the Department of City Planning in the Office of Design on the public space team. I'll be joined by my teammate, Ashley Shorter. She is also an urban designer with the public space team. And my partners from the Atlanta Department of Transportation, Curtis Tiger, who is also an urban planner. He's on the mobility planning team. So we wanted to get together tonight with you guys to let you know about this opportunity that community members have to get involved in the public space design process. And we've incorporated some good feedback from our first Tactical Urbanism Guide release in 2020. And we've added some new project types that we are excited about. So we want to update the public on the guide and let you all know that this is a tool that you can use now. And so tonight we'll be discussing all of the current and new project types that are eligible for implementation. We'll talk about the process of getting a tactical urbanism permit. And we'll also hear from our friend, Jack Seeby, who's a community member who's gone through the tactical urbanism permit process from start to finish, gotten this project installed, and he can talk about his experiences. And so before we dive into the guide, I'll just talk briefly about why this work is important to us. And so all of our work in the Department of City Planning is rooted in Atlanta City Design, which is our guiding document that articulates our shared vision for the future of our city. And it shapes the decisions about the policies and investments that we make to help Atlanta become the best version of itself. And so in 2017, when we started our placemaking work, one of our main objectives was to involve our communities in the planning, design, and the leadership process to bring the changes that they want to see to their neighborhoods. And since most of our public space work up to this point has involved changes to our streets, we thought it was natural to develop a working partnership with our Atlanta Department of Transportation to advance all of our collective goals for public space. And so that has evolved into the Tactical Urbanism Guide that we will discuss more tonight. And so I'll send it to Curtis, who will talk about ATL-DOT's efforts.
Hey, thanks, Chris. Good afternoon, everybody. Like Chris said, I'm Curtis Tiger with ATL-DOT. So this slide is detailing our One Atlanta Strategic Transportation Plan, which is pretty much our guideline here at ATL-DOT for how we approach our transportation goals for the city of Atlanta. I'm not going to go through all the bullet points, but I just want to reiterate the core values that we hold around safety, inclusivity, and access. And the one bullet point that I just want to draw out is Vision Zero, which is our strategic goal towards improving roadway and pedestrian infrastructure for all modes of travel. So with that, I'll pass it back.
Hey, so we're about to start our feedback portion of the presentation, which will be using the website Menti. So if you want to participate, we will be asking multiple choice and open-ended questions in each one of these slides that are coming up next. If you respond to them, you can go to www.menti.com and then you can use the code 39279611. And I'll give everyone a few minutes and see if they are able to log on. And if you cannot, please let us know in the chat. So you should be able to see this next slide. And the question is, which of the following best describes you? Choose all that apply. And we just really want to know who our audience is here today. And I may give this one a few more minutes since it's, okay, people are coming in now. So it looks like we have a lot of City of Atlanta residents and quite a few design and transportation professionals, and then a few applicants for Love Our Places or placemaking programs. So welcome everyone that is in attendance. So the next question would be like, if you were an Atlanta resident, what neighborhood do you live in? We just want to see who all is being reached out in this presentation. And we just want to see what neighborhoods that have not responded and did not see this. So thank you all so much. It looks like we have a lot of Eastsiders, but I appreciate it. I'll give like 10 more seconds just in case. I think we might be missing one person, but if not, I'll move on. So another question is, have you reviewed either the first version of the Tactical Urbanism Guide or the current version, Tactical Urbanism Guide 2.0? Well, it looks like it's almost half and half, maybe some no's. And so in the next few slides, we're really going to be going over what project types we have in the guide and how you as a community can go about doing your own tactical urbanism project within your own community.
So the premise for the tactile urbanism work that we're doing is the fact that a lot of our public spaces kind of look like this, right? They're car oriented, they're unsafe, they're unpleasant to really spend a lot of time in. But our goal over these years of doing placemaking work is to have more of our public spaces look more like this, more safe, vibrant, active, and more people focused. And so tactical urbanism provides a baseline of how these changes can be made. And so we want to see, while we at the city don't always know what's best for our communities, the people who live and breathe and work in these spaces every day know these spaces very well. And so the Tactical Urbanism Guide is really your toolbox to be the change maker and participate in this process. You can go to the next slide. And so you can find our Tactical Urbanism Guide at our city design website. The link is at the bottom there. It's atlcitydesign.com/tactical-urbanism. And so the projects that are included in this version of the guide, there are some carryovers from the first edition with some added, and we broke them out into 3 different categories. One is transportation safety, and that includes curb extensions, demonstration bike or LIT lanes, light individual transport lanes, lane narrowing, slowed shared street, slip lane closures, and walk lanes. And in the amenities category, we have bike parking, bus stop enhancements, and parklets. And in the public art category, we have crosswalk art, pedestrian space art, and traffic signal box art. And so we're going to go through each of these kind of briefly individually, and then we will talk more about the process of getting the permit after this.
All right, I'll be explaining transportation safety. You have about 6 of them, as Chris mentioned. If you can go to the next slide. All right, so the first one that you'll see is curb extensions. This is pretty much a traffic calming measure that reduces the crossing distances at crosswalks and improves pedestrian safety by making them more visible to drivers. This also reduces the speed of drivers as they make turns at intersections. And as you can see on the screen, the different materials that are allowed consist of flex posts, striping, paint, things like that. But this is a tool or measure that is low cost, of course, like many others, and provides better safety for pedestrians. The next slide. Demonstration bike and lit lanes, or light individual transportation lanes. Pretty much these utilize excess roadway width to provide safety for bicyclists, scooters, and other multimodal or micromobility forms. This may help fill gaps in bike networks that you have in your communities, and also see what the possibility of a bike lane may look like in your particular community. So as you can see along with this image, certain materials that can be used in regards to pavement markings, barriers, striping, signage, of course, things like this to really carve out space and delineate that space for pedestrians. The next slide. This one is detailing about lane narrowing. This removes width from existing travel lanes in an effort to reduce travel speeds and increase safety. Similar to the curb extension that you saw earlier, this lane narrowing reduces crossing distances for pedestrians as they look to cross the street. So this is a new one, of course. This one, as you can see, different materials can be used, which goes in further detail in the Tactical Urbanism Guide that we provided a link to. But planters, painting, signage, really trying to reduce the roadway width to make cars or reduce travel speeds of vehicles. Next one is slow shared street. This is a effort to dedicate travel lanes really to local vehicular traffic only. I'm sorry, that word messes me up, which reduces the number of traffic with travel speeds and traffic that goes in and out of neighborhoods. This also provides additional public safety or public space, I'll say, for local residents, just dedicating, that street now to a smaller number of traffic, giving that space more to pedestrians. And the next one is slip lane closures. So the original purpose of the slip lane is to allow vehicles to turn right and allow for that steady movement at intersections. But as many may know, a lot of slip lanes don't serve a real purpose in regards to safety. So what this allows is a closure of slip lanes at intersections that will take away speeding as vehicles make that right turn. And this provides better safety for pedestrians as they cross intersections, as well as opportunities to repurpose the excess space. There is an example of another city, what they did, their slip lane closure in the Tactical Urbanism Guide. So you kind of get ideas of how to utilize that excess space. The next slide is the walk lane. So this is our tactical walk lane image. Pretty much what this is a dedicated pedestrian path that is carved out of an existing roadway. This pedestrian path provides safety for residents of all ages to walk and roll where sidewalks don't currently exist. So this is similar to other ones that you've seen along this presentation, just dedicating more width or more space along streets to pedestrians who may be walking, biking, rolling along our streets. Next slide. With that, I'll pass it back to the planning team.
So for the next grouping of tactical urbanism projects, we'll be looking at 3 different types of amenity project types you can put in the right-of-way. The first one is bike parking, which serves the needs of cyclists by providing secure locations for people to park and lock their bikes. The bike racks can be located on the sidewalk or repurposed on on-street parking spaces. This example is from our 2022 Love Our Places bike parking demonstration project. And in this particular project, we incorporated public art within the system, but you will see that we use vertical barriers that are 28 inches tall. We also use white striping, and then it is also encouraged to use wheel stops. The next option is bus stop enhancement, which includes seating, signage, and/or public art. The goal for this project type is to make sure our bus stops are more safe, comfortable, and inviting for transit users. And in this image, it shows that movable seating must allow at least 5 feet sidewalk clearance along the sidewalk. And this must also be located quite close to bus stops. And then the final example of amenities would be parklets, which provide outdoor seating and amenity space for people by repurposing on-street parking. And this example is a demonstration project we did at Buzz Coffee. When you do demonstration projects, they usually last up to 30 days. And you use, in this example, we used vertical barriers, which were Jersey barriers. And also we had ADA ramp landing down to the on-street parking. Is the reusable, you can do it again. It's very tactical. And then we also use movable furnishings. And for, we had 3 different project types for the public art space. The first one is crosswalk art, which utilizes existing crosswalks to highlight pedestrian crossing and improve crosswalk visibility. This example is at East Atlanta Village, which the city has improved visibility of this crosswalk. And it's very important to remember that you will have to do crosswalks and do these crosswalk art in existing crosswalks. We do not, tactical urbanism does not call for putting in ADA curbs in, so it has to be an existing one. The next example of the public art project type is the pedestrian space art, which creatively enhances the public realm. These projects incorporate art into tactical curb extensions, lane narrowing, slip lane closures, walk lanes, bike parking, and parklets. And this signals to drivers that this is a pedestrian space only. And this example is done at right in front of Broad Street Boardwalk. And a good thing to remember is that when you do these types of projects, the asphalt must be in really good condition because it's very hard for artists to paint on potholes or messed up concrete. And our final example of public art is traffic signal box art. It utilizes a piece of traffic infrastructure to create an art canvas. The art on these boxes contributes to one's sense of place. This image is from Peachtree and Mitchell Street on the corner, and it is really important to remember when you do these traffic boxes, they must be in the city-owned right-of-way. So after looking through all the different project types, from which project from this list are you most interested in? And you have 12 different options. So it looks like people are interested in curb extensions and definitely the demonstration bike lane, walk lanes, parklets, and definitely crosswalk art and pedestrian space art.
Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about the project process. So we've broken out into 2 phases. So phase 1 is the design process. So 1, you start with an idea of something you want to do in your community, and next you'll go and review the guide. And so you will then start to apply for design approval. And so we will take the documents that you submit in your design application, and our team at City Planning and ATL DOT will then review those documents, and we may come back to you with some review and comments, but generally in 5 to 10 business days, the city will issue your design approval. So you're cleared from the design phase. Second, you'll go into implementation. And so with your design approval, next you'll then apply for a right-of-way closure permit, which we also provide you the documents there. And so that permit allows you to work in the street safely with it blocked off. And depending on the type of project that you're doing, that will basically determine the length of time that you need that permit for. And so ATL DOT will review the permit documents that you submit. And again, we may go back and forth with you, make any changes, and then we will issue your right-of-way closure permit to give you the dates and times that you can go ahead and install your project. And then installing the project is on the community team that applies. You can have volunteers, it can be your neighbors, etc. And then hopefully everything will go swimmingly with no delays, and you'll have a great tactical urbanism project. So you can go to the next slide. And so these are some of the required documents that you will need. And so in the first phase with your project design, you'll submit to us several site photos, basically detailing the length of your project and every kind of angle that you will be affecting your project. A site plan, which can be hand-drawn or computer drawn. It doesn't have to be a professional drawing, but as detailed and as accurate as you can get would be great. You'll list the materials that you need, and we have a list of materials that are eligible for each project type in the guide. So once you review the projects in the guide that you want to use, that will kind of determine what your material list will be. And we'll also have a sample maintenance agreement that you will sign and submit to us, basically telling us that you, the community, will take care of the project. In addition to the design process, you will need to get community support letters. So you'll need at least 3 letters from property owners or business owners that are immediately adjacent to the project. We do this so that we're not kind of blindsiding anybody with projects, and that you have your community's support. And in addition to that, a community engagement plan from start to finish, basically just telling us how you will engage your neighbors, how you will include them in the process, and how they will be basically just part of the project going forward. And so that's all part of the design phase documents. And so once you get to the permit documents, you'll need a traffic control plan. This is basically showing how the streets will be configured once you're doing the project. It can be also, this is also could be very simple, showing where you have closures and where traffic may need to be redirected. You'll have your installation schedule. And if you're using volunteers, we'll need them to sign a release form. And then you'll have a certificate of insurance included with these permit documents, so that you'll submit to us. And then once we give you the go-ahead, you'll put up closure notices and project info signs in the areas that you're doing your project at. And so now we will send it to Jack Seeby, who is with the Kirkwood Neighborhood Organization. His neighborhood used the Tactical Urbanism Guide to get a permit to install curb extensions and do traffic calming at the intersection of Rocky Ford Road and Emery Place. And so he'll talk to us about the process of using the guide, getting the permit, and then how his group was able to successfully leverage their work to get their project installed. So Jack, I'll talk to you or send it to you.
Thanks, Chris. Afternoon, everyone. Like Chris said, my name is Jack Seeby. I'm a resident of Kirkwood and a member of Kirkwood Neighborhood Organization. And we last year implemented, I think was, if not the first, one of the first tactical urbanism, community-led tactical urbanism projects in Atlanta. With the help of a whole lot of neighbors, the Kirkwood Neighborhood Organization Transportation Committee, and it really proved to be a wonderful experience kind of all around. I mean, it was a lot of work, don't get me wrong, but you know, the process was I think as smooth as it could have been, and you know, it was a really fun time, you know, not only to improve the community, make our streets safer in Kirkwood and address a problem, but like get to know a lot of our neighbors and, you know, connect with your neighbors. So with that, I'll just kind of jump into it and give a overview of, you know, what we went through to get to the final product and beyond. So this was kind of our process in a nutshell. It didn't really, it wasn't, you know, quite this linear, but these were the key steps. It started with idea generation and, you know, picking the site. And then, boots on the ground, neighbor outreach, and, talking with the broader neighborhood as well. So, door to door kind of along the street, and but also communicating it to the broader neighborhood, and just educating your neighbors about the process was a big part of it too. Securing funding, that's kind of a key part of this, because the onus is on the residents to come up with the funding for the project. And so I'll talk through how we went about that. Then, once you kind of have those key pieces in place, generating the site plan, getting it approved, permitting the traffic control, and then organizing and planning and executing for build day is the other big heavy lift with all of this. And then finally, I'll go into some of the kind of post-project steps that you need to take if you get grants, to close out grants, and also to help just kind of spread awareness of the benefit of your project. Next slide, please. So first off, selecting a site. I'm sure every community, every neighborhood has their own kind of way of doing things, and very much depends on what your goals are of the project. There are a lot of different project types. What we wanted to do primarily was address a safety concern that was one, very in an area that was very visible, so a lot of neighbors would see it, and two, in an area that we thought would have a big impact. So a corridor that has a lot of problems, a lot of complaints, and then finally figuring out a site that can meet your budgetary restrictions, as well as meet the design limitations of the project is important too. This was we have a lot of transportation priorities in Kirkwood, but we ended up selecting the site, which is the intersection of Emory Place and Rocky Ford Road, because Rocky Ford has a fair amount of traffic and a fair amount of speeding traffic. It's kind of a community thoroughfare to get to DeKalb Avenue. There are no sidewalks at this intersection, so the bulb outs that we installed provide some walking space, some safe refuge for pedestrians and bikes and people with strollers. A lot of visibility here, and the site, it was a wide intersection, so there's a lot of room to work with, and there weren't any like parking impacts or issues such as like restricting access to mailboxes or driveways. So you really have to, when you're selecting a site, think about not only kind of how does it work from a big picture perspective, but also think about think through the design before you select the site, and some of the issues that might pop up once you get into the details of the design. Next slide, please. After selecting this design, we started our neighborhood outreach to spread the word about our plan, to solicit volunteers, because you're going to need help building this thing most likely, to get feedback from residents, from not only neighbors adjacent to the project, but neighbors of the broader community, get feedback on the design, which was really helpful and ultimately really helped kind of strengthen the design and strengthen the buy-in for the project. And yeah, just communicate why you're doing it, and that the neighborhood organization is taking charge. Those are kind of great things to build the strength of your neighborhood. And so what we did is we made these flyers, we gave them out to neighbors within about a block of the project, and had them, we knocked on doors and talked with them, talked about their issues, adjusted the plan to address those issues, and ultimately got that adjusted plan approved by the neighborhood organization, and they signed off with a letter of support. You know, the other piece of that is getting letters of support from the neighbors, which I don't think we had to do in our under the old guidelines, but we did get letters of support from our council person, as well as I'm trying to think. We had a third, maybe it was two council people who provided letters of support, and we did talk to all the adjacent neighbors. So you know, we covered our bases there. You know, things to include are, you know, elements of the design, your timeline for implementation, and, you know, where to sign up to help out. Those are kind of the big key elements. Next slide. You know, the biggest challenge, I think, for a lot of us is securing the funding to implement the project. So even before, you know, you propose a project, it's good to think, you know, try to think through how much it's going to cost and what you think you can raise funding wise. We were fortunate to get a MPU community impact grant. There's a long link to that below. I think if you just Google search MPU community impact grant, if you're not familiar, you'll find a lot of information about those. But this program is run by the city of Atlanta. It's open to all MPUs, and it provides, I think we got a $5,000 award for MPUO or MPU, and we split that with the Edgewood community. They did a mural with $2,500, and we used $2,500 to help with our project. So that was kind of the big, you know, that was what we needed to get the project off the ground, essentially. So if you're trying to figure out funding, I would definitely encourage you to kind of look into the MPU community impact grants. And then, you know, once we had that kind of that seed money, we went out and we tried to gain in-kind donation or materials donations and in-kind donations from retailers and you know, Home Depot. We went to Midtown Home Depot, talked with their manager there, and I think all the local managers have, you know, basically a community project slush fund that they can give like $500 micro grants to for materials. So, you know, that was a great benefit for us. We also had the traffic control, the temporary traffic control devices like the cones and the signs and the you know, reversible slow stop signs. Those were donated by a local traffic control supply company. I think, you know, that was probably like equivalent to like a $3,000 donation. So that was really important to us too. As well as a bunch of smaller, you know, Ace Hardware, Sunbelt Rentals, they all provided, you know, materials and equipment for us to use. So couldn't have done it without all those, you know, big and small, you know, funding sources. Next slide. And so, you know, once you have your idea of what you want to do, once you have your funding in place, and you're ready to move forward with the project, and once you've, you know, started gathering community support, it's time to take your design and submit it to approval. You know, apply for the tactical urbanism permit. This is a drawing of the ultimate design that was approved by the DOT. I will admit my day job is traffic engineer, so I probably had a leg up on a lot of people and, you know, coming up with this site plan. But, you know, even so, the DOT was still very helpful in, you know, providing quick feedback and direction about changes. And so, you know, they're there to support you. And, you know, you also may have traffic engineers like me in your community who can help out too. So there's definitely, you know, folks out there that can help develop a plan and, you know, try to talk through some ideas. So, you know, like I said, we kind of did a realignment of the intersection and provided bulb outs to narrow the traffic lanes and to slow slow traffic around this kind of blind curve. And then also, it has the added benefit of providing some walking and biking and strollering space for neighbors, since there are no sidewalks south of the project along Rocky Ford. And yeah, so next slide, please. So I think Chris covered the closure permit that's required, as well, the right-of-way, temporary right-of-way closure permit. And this is just an example of how we marked up, our traffic control plan for the install event. I believe you have to submit it at least 10 days ahead of the install day if you're doing a road closure. But the sooner the better you can submit this. Because there may be changes and that sort of thing that you go back and forth on. But so with this project, there were two options really to install it, and there was we could either apply for a full road closure or a single lane closure. And we opted for the single lane closure just because of the cost implications of the full road closure. With the full road closure, you have to get off-duty police officers, and that they typically run about I think around like $50 an hour to hire, and so that adds up quickly with a small budget event. With the temporary lane closure, you just have to have flaggers, which we had equipped them with the reversible signs and walkie-talkies, and put out signs that with all the kind of to warn folks of the project ahead, and then coned it off so it was just one car at a time could go through the site while we were constructing, so that slowed people down too. I would definitely think through how traffic control is going to work. It's and have a plan and have a good communication strategy in place, because you don't want to be messing around with moving cars, and especially have volunteers and their kids and things like that. It can be a tricky situation. So definitely put a good bit of thought into how you're going to execute the traffic control and kind of organize the build day, so that people aren't crossing the street unnecessarily, and that sort of thing. Next slide. And then before you know it, your build day will be there. So with that NPU grant, we had to spend that money before the end of 2021. So once we received that grant, the clock was ticking. And I think we originally planned for like an October 10th date. And then, I think it was forecasting rain. So we pushed it to the next weekend when it rained. And then we had, we finally implemented it on the second rain date, the third day that we'd planned for. So definitely consider, rain dates when painting in the great outdoors. That's and just getting people to show up to help paint is the other thing. You have to order all the materials ahead of time and store them somewhere. So having volunteers lined up to help store materials and get them to the site is important. Getting the volunteers to sign up, and then also to to fill out the waivers. Having somebody like kind of a point person and like a kind of a headquarters tent on build day is a suggestion I would make, just to so people know where to go when they get there to check in, and there's always someone there to kind of let them know what to do. The other thing I would say is thinking through what kind of people are going to show up, and trying to have activities planned out for the different kind of people you might get. So not everybody's going to be able to use a hammer drill to bolt in wheel stops to the roadway. And, but there's a lot of painting that we needed to do. So, having kind of paint areas laid out for people to paint with if they show up and only have an hour to help, things like that is important to think through. And then, prep work, set up and tear down, definitely, getting there the day before. You have to go out and put out, parking, any temporary parking restrictions, signs for that, any temporary road closure restrictions, signs for that ahead of time. So that's one prep thing you have to do, but also, going out and blowing the leaves off the site and, brushing off the debris so that, you're not painting over dirt. And, what I did was go out and actually, mark out with marking paint the outlines of the bulb outs the night before. So when people showed up and I was running around the day of, you could just point, hey, paint in the lines over there. So kind of thinking through that is important. And then finally, communications and safety. I think those speak for themselves, but having folks that you can rely on to say stop if something's unsafe is very important. And we had a couple instances where we just needed to stop and regroup and talk with people and to make sure that everybody was being safe. So don't ever hesitate to do that and feel empowered to do that. Next slide. And then, so this is a quick video that shows what it looked like after we got done. It's still up. It's lasted pretty well. We hadn't really had to maintain it. There hadn't been any issues since it's been installed. So neighborhood is still enjoying it. We're probably going to try to refresh it and apply for, we applied for the 1-year installation permit. So what we'll likely want to do is try to refresh that and have that at the intersection for another year if possible, because it's been a great success and welcome to the street. Next slide. And then I think this is my final slide. With the NPU grant, there is some closeout things that you have to do to get reimbursed. And so, keep track of your receipts and your accounting. It's not especially arduous process, but that's important to do. And then you also have to complete a maintenance agreement to agree to maintain the project for the life, the permit duration, which I have a copy of here. The one thing that I forgot to mention earlier that I know a lot of people have had questions on was the insurance requirements. We had our insurance provider for Kirkwood Neighborhood Organization. They were able to provide us with an insurance policy for the event that met the city's requirements. It was about, I think, $600 to meet those requirements. So not, in the kind of grand scheme of things, it was, yes, a cost, but not an impossible cost to meet. And if anybody has, wants information about, who our insurance provider is, who provided that event policy for the Tactical Urbanism project, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you their contact info. They're familiar with these types of projects now. So that might be a good place to start. I think that's it. I'll pass it back over to Chris or whomever is talking next.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jack. That was super helpful. So we want to open up the floor now to questions. So I know a couple have been addressed in the chat, but also if you could add those to this Menti, so we have them recorded here as well, and we can direct you to best who can answer those.
See, we have.
And so while that's getting populated, I do want to address a couple of questions we got in the chat. One is, where can folks submit ideas for other projects for the city to act upon? And if they don't have the finances to secure the insurance, or want to help out with someone else's idea. So we encourage you guys to definitely reach out to us at mobility@atlantagA.gov. That is our email address. That the team will get that email, and we will definitely work with you on the specifics of your project and help guide you to the right places. So it's not just a one-time submission process. We are definitely willing to work with you throughout your project's duration. And another question that came in the chat is, are applications accepted from people who don't live where they want to do a TU project? And so generally we want to have the folks who live in their communities do the projects in that community. But if you do have an idea for another community, we'd like you to partner with that local neighborhood organization to get that support and buy-in, just to make sure that you're not just throwing a project somewhere where it's not wanted or needed. And that's also part of the reason why we have the community support letters.
Hollis has her hand raised.
Okay. Got you.
Hey, I had a question, and it might be for Jack, or I'm not sure, but Jack, you had said you had single lane closures. Was that on, two questions, was that only for the day of the event? And then the way you did your insurance, it sounds like you called it an event policy. So you only did insurance for one day. I mean, you were covering one day for that one activity. Is that correct?
Yes, on both counts. So
Okay.
yeah, it was the traffic control permit was just for that day. And then the insurance policy was just for the event.
Okay, and then I have another question, possibly for Chris. If you have a combination of projects in one general area, it's going to be about a 2-block long, but there's like 5 little projects. Would those be 5 applications, or would I submit it as one application and then we break it in pieces?
It will be submitted as one application. So all the components of the one project, if it's the same group that's all working on that same project, then it's one submission.
Okay, and then to follow up on the insurance requirements, if one of your projects is going to require literal construction, does the city allow insurance to be covered by a vendor that your organization hires to do that?
When you say construction, what do you mean?
Like if we have one piece that we haven't applied yet before, but I'm thinking it would be an amenity because it's in the 54 columns art project and Old Fourth Ward. And there's parts of the property where we want to put some stadium type seating. And clearly that's not going to be like neighbors or volunteers. We're going to have to, we're fundraising now, but we're going to have to bring in a company to grate the land, bring in the stone, embed it into the embankment. So it's going to be a big project, but would we do that through urban planning?
Well, insurance wise, the vendor, yes, can have insurance or should have insurance for sure. I need to make sure that covers the entire project though, because it's more than just the construction. Of course, you have, the maintenance, there's other aspects of it. So we definitely want to make sure that the applicant has insurance. Now, if the vendors are partnered, you guys are doing this project together, then that could be something that you partner on. But if it's something that you just hire a vendor just to do the work and leave, then you all would definitely need to have a separate insurance to cover that.
And maintenance agreement and all of that stuff.
Yes. Okay. If it closes a right of way, you definitely have to have a permit that comes with the maintenance agreement, traffic control plan that Chris mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Curtis, let me add on to that. So this tactical urbanism process does not apply to actual construction projects, especially if they're on private property. So what you were explaining kind of sounded like it was, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't consider that to be a tactical urbanism project.
Okay. Yeah, I'll probably put it in the one overall application, but then we'll break it apart once I get y'all's assistance. But it's Fulton County and City of Atlanta property.
Okay, and you said you would need to do like excavating and.
It's not really excavating. It's already, the property already has the art up on a mound. It's mostly grading and then putting in some seating around that.
Okay. Yeah, we may have to just kind of maybe have a separate meeting with you just to get a full understanding of the project.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to some of the other questions. So one, are there specific areas that we are targeting for crosswalk projects?
No particular areas that take priority, if that's the question. If there is a crosswalk in your neighborhood that you see to be fit for an artistic kind of upgrade, temporary upgrade, that's perfectly fine. In the Tactical Urbanism Guide, you'll see the guidelines around where the crosswalk arts, what type of crosswalks have to be there in order for the artwork to be there, along with the color palette that has to be used. So what colors you can use or what not use. So there isn't a specific area, but definitely as you're looking at, areas in your community, ones that stand out the most, what Jack was saying earlier, that intersection on Rocky Ford was a community prioritized intersection, so that was something the community saw as something that needed to be corrected, even if it's temporarily. So I would just advise for you to look at a crosswalk that the community finds to be one for a temporary or tactical urbanism project.
Cool. The next question, why do these projects have to be temporary? Why are you doing them when there's a huge backlog of permanent projects that need to be done?
Yeah, well, this is a great little note to T-Splosh 2 is coming up to vote. So, that is something that we are advocating for as well to handle some of the backlog. But this, of course, has to be temporary. This is a tactical project. This is a process to see what long-term solutions could look like through a temporary short-term process. So, yes, it may not last forever, but we do have different, processes. We can have a demonstration, which lasts about 30 days, or pilot, which can last up to a year. And if not longer, we can definitely have some wiggle room for how long it can last. But we have, various timelines on how long they can be installed.
And that's kind of a good segue to that last question is, can you review what tactical urbanism means again? So tactical urbanism is a kind of the overarching term for a low cost and short-term process, using kind of lower cost materials to, as Curtis mentioned, to test how these ideas will be, can change the feel and the use of our public spaces. And so tactical urbanism is kind of a grouping of baseline projects that can be done without thousands or millions of dollars to see how a potential change could be permanent and what that change, how that change affects the public space that we have. So that's a good point to remember to answer that question. And so the next question is, can the walk lane projects be used to create a multi-use path?
I don't want to say yes. I do. The guideline is the guideline. We don't want to deviate and recreate, what we put in there. So I will say the walk lane has to be what is said in the Tactical Urbanism Guide. Now, a multi-use path, of course, you can use it for walking, biking. And as you saw in the photo, there were definitely people who were biking along that walk lane. So, if other modes of micromobility forms happen to use it, that's perfectly fine. There is no, enforcement in regards to, the mobility of micromobility. Now, of course, cars can't use it, but In regards to pedestrian access, that is perfectly fine, but the walk lane has to be what is put in the Tactile Urbanism Guide. It has to follow those guidelines.
And the next question is, do you consider adding performing arts to the public art part of your process? I guess we can answer that one. We are open to different kinds of arts being used or being performed in the spaces that we create. Specifically through the tactile urbanism process, the art that's going in the right of way is what we are permitting. So we're not specifying that you can do performances and curb extensions, for example, but the work that is being done is specifically for a type of art. So while we're not saying that you can't do these things, we're just saying that's probably a separate process of getting like performance space in our tactical projects. So we'll be considering what the art projects are that are in the guide currently. But if you do have other suggestions for projects or other types of projects, you can reach out to us. Another question that came in the chat is, are we planning to assist those that are in the high injury network? And are we assisting neighborhoods in the sidewalk deficiency areas to help those citizens? I think that's a DOT question.
Yeah, I'll take that. So we do have a list of communities, about 9 communities of concern. And those are primarily south side of town. So I don't think any of the communities that are on that list are on this call. So we definitely have to make sure that we push this information to them as well. But we do provide some free materials for communities of concern. And these communities have been designated communities of concern based upon various metrics regarding to income, regarding to number of kids, senior citizens, access to vehicles. So not necessarily deficiencies in sidewalks, but definitely, communities that have, just real need for some support, additional support. So we will loan some materials to them that they have to be returned. So it's not a free giveaway, I'll say, but definitely something that we provide to them temporarily. And then when the project is done, of course, we'll collect those materials back. So to answer that question, not necessarily looking at sidewalk deficiencies, but more so looking at which communities need more investment in regards to the current demographics. So that's hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, don't see any other questions, and we're coming up on our hour. So I think if there are no other questions, I think we can wrap up. We can go to the next slide. And so just to close everything out, you can find our Tactical Urbanism Guide at the atlcitydesign.com website. And once you have reviewed that guide, the permit documents that you'll need will be located on ATLDOT's website, and that is at the second link there. And so finally, if you have any other questions after this meeting, you can certainly reach out to our team at mobility@atlantaga.gov, and our individual email addresses are here as well. So with that, I think we can wrap it up. And again, thanks everyone for attending. And we really appreciate you guys' excitement for these projects. So thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.